Oh my gosh, guys.
Alright, we got limited time. I want to go to bed. Here we go. Hey, Mr. Beverly. Matt here.
Sam here. Jay here. Rick.
No, that's good. That's good.
Okay, no more intro. I'm just gonna talk.
I want to be like Mike one day. It's go time. I'm so hungry.
I really wanted to eat this delectable gingerbread house. It looks so good and I spent so much time on it. But this poor homeless man needs it more than I do.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Darn it. It hit my paddle. But this was for the win. Should I tell him? Oh wait, I have integrity. Yee!
I've been really trying.
Sam, it actually hit my paddle.
What you know about me? What you know about me? What you know about me? What you know? They said my lip gloss is cool. My lip gloss be popping. I'm standing at my locker and all the boys keep. What you know about me? What you know about me?
Give me the purse.
Thank you, mi amor.
What you know about me? What you know about me?
You go to my head and you linger like a haunting refrain.
Oh no, my worst fear. Oh no.
Ma'am, are you okay?
What?
Ma'am, are you okay?
What do you say?
Do you need help going up the stairs?
What's help? Hey, the stairs.
Yeah, let us help you.
Oh my stars! I feel so much younger. Oh, this is wonderful. I'm sorry, I've been eating too much food.
Holy cow! Oh my gosh!
You boys are so strong. Help me. Oh, thank you, young man.
no problem.
I can't thank you enough. And
Okay.
you, thank you so much.
No. Thank you.
Can't you see that it never can be?
In our first skit, we talked about, or we tried to demonstrate commitment. And in the video, Jay wanted to be Michael Jordan, who's a very good basketball player.
Yes.
He's not really anymore,
Yes,
but he was
true.
once. And we thought we'd show commitment by showing his dedication to the game and his hustle, and he
Training.
just kept pushing and training. Yeah,
Yeah, that's
exactly.
right.
And I think it turned out pretty well.
Our second one was on sacrifice. Rick sacrifices a gingerbread house to a homeless man in need, which is a very big sacrifice.
Yeah, I worked very hard on
He
it.
worked hard on it.
Yeah, he
and it
spent a
went
lot of
to
time
zero.
making it, and we were just
Delectable.
trying to show how he would take all that time to make that and just give it to someone.
Yeah.
And then
Being
homeless
so
man
selfless.
enjoyed it.
The third
Yeah,
one we
sorry.
actually did patriotism, and we started off with Jay listening to the Russian anthem or like singing along with it.
Yes.
And we're not really big fans of the Russian anthem, so we had Rick come in there and just push him out of the way and get the real national anthem on there, which
Big
is the
patriot.
USA.
Yeah.
Star Spangled Banner, right?
Absolutely.
USA,
Francis Scott
baby.
Key. But yeah, we chose that because it just really demonstrated like American
Patriotism.
and like what strong Americans do normally practice. They practice that. Our fourth one, we did integrity. Jay and Sam were playing ping pong, and the ball actually hit Jay's paddle, and Jay had to decide whether or not to tell Sam that it hit his paddle. And Jay, being the great guy he did, he came up to him, whispered in his ear, didn't want to embarrass himself in front of everyone, but he said, "Hey Sam, the ball actually did hit my paddle," and
Yep.
Sam was grateful he did that.
So in the fifth one, we did courage, and I was walking along, and Matt actually steals my purse. So then we had him running away with it, but Sam comes in and courageously takes
Saves
it
the
back
day.
and
Yeah.
gives it back to me. That's what I do. Very courageous.
And for the last one, we did citizenship. Matt and Sam demonstrated citizenship when they helped the old lady, which was me, up the stairs, and she was very grateful for that.
I was grateful as well.
Yes. And they're just being good citizens. They're helping people in need, which in this case was the old lady.
Does the government have a responsibility to healthcare services? Should wealthy individuals pay a larger burden of tax? Should Donald Trump build a wall on the U.S.-Mexico border? Should the drinking age be lowered to 18? Should marijuana be illegal in every state? And finally, should juveniles be offered the same legal protections as adults in Congress? Okay, so, and would you guys consider yourselves
Should public schools be allowed to begin each day with prayer?
Be allowed to or forced to?
Should be allowed to.
They should be allowed to.
Does the government have a responsibility to offer health care to all citizens?
Yes.
Should wealthy individuals pay a larger burden of tax?
Yes.
Should Donald Trump build a wall along the U.S.-Mexico border?
No.
Should the drinking age be lowered to 18?
Yes.
Should marijuana be illegal in every state, even for medicinal use?
No.
Should juveniles be offered the same level of legal protections as adults upon arrest?
They should have more protections.
And last question, would you consider yourself a liberal individual or conservative?
Right in the middle. Right.
All right, first question. Should public schools be allowed to begin each day with a prayer?
That's a good question. Public schools, I guess it depends on what religion it is. You know?
Okay.
If everyone follows the same religion, I don't see a problem with it. Otherwise, they might have to switch it off to different religions.
Okay, next question. Does the government have a responsibility to offer health care to all citizens? Should wealthy individuals pay a larger burden of income tax?
I don't necessarily think so.
Okay. Should Donald Trump build a wall along the U.S.-Mexican border? Should the drinking age be lowered to 18? Should marijuana be illegal in every state, even for medicinal use?
I think it should be legal for anything but just
Okay. And last question. Should juveniles be offered the same level of legal protections as adults upon arrest?
Yes.
And out of these 4 age groups, which one would you say that you fit into?
I fit into that one.
All right, thank you for your time.
Okay.
Appreciate it.
I just have to establish.
Yes.
Number 1. Should public schools be allowed to begin each day with a prayer? Does the government have a responsibility to offer health care to all citizens? Should wealthy individuals pay a larger burden of federal tax than women? Should Donald Trump build a wall along the U.S.-Mexico border? Absolutely not. Should the drinking age be lowered to 18? Should marijuana be illegal in every state, even for medicinal use? Should juveniles be offered the same level of legal protections as adults? Would you consider yourself liberal or conservative? Thank you for your time.
I'm over 50.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so the first question. Do you believe that public schools should be allowed to open each day with a prayer? Or start the day off with a prayer?
No.
No? Okay. Second question. Does the government have a responsibility to offer health care to all citizens?
Yes.
Okay. Third question. Should wealthy individuals pay a larger burden of federal tax?
I don't think that's a yes or no question.
Well,
I don't think I can answer.
Alright, okay. So, fourth question. Should Donald Trump build a wall along the U.S. Mexico border?
No.
Okay, fifth question. Should the drinking age in the U.S. be lowered to age 18?
Yes.
Sixth question. Should marijuana be illegal in every state, even for medicinal uses?
Illegal.
Yes.
No.
Okay. And then the last question. Should juveniles be offered the same level of legal protections as adults on arrest?
For sure.
Sure?
Yes.
Okay. And then the last question, would you consider yourself to be a liberal or a conservative? Liberal.
Alright, so I interviewed the two below 21 girls, and I think their answers were like kind of varied. There were some more liberal responses and some more conservative ones, and I think they were maybe moderate. Like I guess you'd consider them moderate, which probably most people out there would be moderates. The one thing I think it does show, they didn't really know like what we were asking in a lot of the questions, so maybe people aren't as well educated at that age.
Another subject under the age of 21. I think that this guy is more liberal, even though he considered himself right in the middle, as he put it, because all of his answers, he answered right away for most of them, with liberal answers, like for the marijuana and for the drinking age. So even though he says he's right in the middle, I consider him a liberal.
Third person we interviewed was the man that was between 21 and 30 years old. We asked him a couple questions, and most of his answers appeared to be conservative. We asked him the question on whether or not prayer should be allowed in public school, and he said that it depends on what religion that is. So we said it was a public school, so I guess he just is in support of prayer at schools. And then we also asked him if wealthy individuals should pay a larger burden of federal tax, and he said that he doesn't think so, which also leads to be a conservative answer.
Then we interviewed a 31 to 50-year-old lady, and we've determined that she's definitely a more liberal person. As she said, she considered herself a diehard liberal, and I think that was backed up by her liberal answers, especially when she said absolutely not to the Donald Trump wall. And the only conservative answer that she had was the drinking age. She said it should stay at 21, but other than that, all of her answers were definitely liberal.
Okay, so the lady that I interviewed, we considered her to be a liberal. She gave many liberal responses. For example, when I asked about Donald Trump building the wall, she said definitely not. So there's definitely a strong emphasis there. It seemed like maybe she had one slightly conservative thought when I asked her about if wealthy individuals should pay more taxes than like poor individuals. But she didn't really show it. She gave a little hint of it. But we would definitely consider her to be a liberal more than a conservative.
Some young man from Wheaton North High School.
So for our board meeting, we went to the Warrenville Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Commission on November 8th.
It's a good way to spend our, it was a Thursday evening, some
Yeah.
quality time.
So to begin,
We walked
we walked in, but when we got into the meeting, I don't know, we could kind of talk about the format. What really surprised, I think, all of us was how organized the structure of the meeting was. So when we walked in, we sat down. First, the head of the commission handed everybody a sheet of paper, including us, which kind of had an outline for what they were going to discuss for the day.
Yep.
And it was very well organized. They even requested to skip one of the steps on the outline. The head of
they
the
had a
commission.
visitor, I believe.
Yeah, so they skipped one of the steps, and it was so formal that they went through the process the person in charge said like all in favor of skipping the step, and those in favor raised their hands and said aye.
And they all did, I think.
And yeah, and she said all opposed, and nobody raised their hands. So like even though it's kind of like a low level committee, it's still very formal and organized.
And that was at the very beginning, and it kind of like caught me off guard, like because I didn't really think it was that structured, and we were the only ones in there. So
yeah. And they were very nice to us.
Yeah, they're all very nice.
I remember we walked into the building. I don't remember which one of you guys did, but we walked into the meeting room, and I think Rick just like sat at the table with them.
I think I did that. I sat at the. We had to sit at like the side. There was like a side row for us, and I didn't know that. I like sat almost at the head of the table, and he's like, "Oh, buddy, you're not supposed to be there."
All right, so the Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Commission is basically in charge of finding new projects for the city of Warrenville, mainly involving stuff like pedestrian crossings at major intersections, new bike paths, and things like that. And what was interesting for me, I thought, was how the people obviously were residents of Warrenville, so they were really, I think probably what got them involved was that they live around areas that maybe don't have great access to like parks and stuff like that. So that's probably like it seems like that's what got them involved. Was trying to.
They were passionate.
Yeah,
it was very evident they were passionate.
Yeah, it's not like they were government officials.
No,
they're just.
Some of them were volunteers.
Yeah,
I think one of them might have been elected.
And that's how they were trying to appeal to us in that way. Like they were trying to appeal to us because we were the only ones there, and they're like, "Oh, you guys like your prairie path and all that." They were trying to involve us. Like
they obviously cared a lot.
Yeah.
Should we move into some of the topics they talked about?
So, they mentioned a lot, like how they get their like projects proposed and like passed, and it's a very long and complicated process from what they were saying.
Even for something as simple as bike paths, it just everything is so complex and
with
a lot
the
of
land
steps.
and all that. So they mentioned the term policy documents a lot, and essentially, it's like what it sounds like. It's a policy document that they have to basically create within their committee, and they have to send that off to like a higher government official, or like there's a lot of like I wrote down some names of the contracting people, like
it's basically
KLOA.
proposes their plan, and like they send it to see if it can get approved or not.
Right.
And oftentimes it's kind of hard. I mean, I know they were talking about how even though they petitioned to get like I think it was pedestrian crossings at like some intersection in Warrenville, like they said it was still like very difficult to get stuff through. So
yeah, and there's just a lot of like things that could potentially restrict creating these new paths, like things like districts and like there are all these different borders, and they were they all seem, I mean they had to be knowledgeable, but they all seem pretty knowledgeable about like logically like placing walkways like in specific spots or like medians in the road. Like they all knew a lot about it, and like they were discussing, and like some people were disagreeing, but they were respectful about it, like proposing counter arguments and all this stuff.
Yeah. And they mentioned their close work with developers. So these are the people that they're the construction workers. Essentially, they are the ones that like work on the projects themselves, and they mentioned like the benefits for the developers themselves if they build a strong relationship with the community, like the state itself, or they will get more business, obviously, and they'll work on more projects.
I remember this one guy named Chad who was sitting at the end of the table. He proposed an idea to put a stoplight in so we could get another crosswalk, but Bill, who was the man that was a guest speaker, elected government official at the meeting, was saying how they couldn't achieve that because of all the processes they'd have to go through with the stoplight commission and all that stuff.
Yeah. So this guy so the guy Bill that Matt was talking about, so everybody there was a member of this committee, but then we realized they had this guest speaker in who was actually like a worker of the government. He was an official, and he basically like it was almost like he was tutoring them in a way, like kind of explaining a lot of things. They were asking a lot of questions.
So basically a Q&A with
this guy. It was pretty much like a Q&A with the government official who was very knowledgeable about all these different like walkways and like implementing all the rules and stuff.
I just remember he gave one like kind of wishy-washy. He gave like one kind of wishy-washy answer, and the lady that asked the question kind of jumped on him like with a ton of follow-up questions because she really wanted to know the answer.
They were very persistent.
And I think with him being there too, a lot of it was they were like they wanted to see why like when they proposed something like it wouldn't go through. Like I think he was kind of the one explaining like why some of the stuff they wanted to do couldn't get done.
Right. So they talked about a couple specific examples. I don't know if that was just because we were here, we were there, but they mentioned they compared Route 56 and Batavia Road, the intersection there, versus Route 56 and Winfield Road. They were very proud because they worked on Batavia Road of the intersection there, and they said that it was a lot safer, and that they wanted to work on Winfield Road, but it wasn't necessarily in their jurisdiction.
Yeah.
All the way through, like, because some of it's in Winfield itself.
Yeah,
But-
didn't they say they added a median or something?
Yeah, they added a median on Batavia Road.
Yeah,
and
so
the
they
guys seemed very proud of that. Like,
Yeah.
they were
Yeah,
very proud. So yeah.
They were also very concerned with like the bigger picture. It wasn't just like I need a path to get from like my neighborhood to a park. It was
Right.
more. They were talking a lot about like people being able to get to the train stations in both Winfield and Naperville. So I think like it was kind of interesting to see like how they were that concerned about like just the bigger idea, like connecting to other towns and things like that. So they did have like kind of a good idea of like the whole area.
Mm-hmm. And also around the room there were maps kind of posted up against the wall, and this one guy, I forget his name. Chad.
Yeah.
Well, Chad kept getting up and kind of like he was talking and he was kind of explaining like or asking questions, and he would use the map kind of like as his guide, and like there was just a lot of it going around, so it kind of seemed like they were very resourceful, and they had a lot of like maps to their that they had access to.
Yeah.
I guess.
And they seemed very adamant about it.
Yeah.
Well, another thing that they mentioned is kind of how long it takes, like with the policy documents. They go through budget seasons. They start in October, and the things that they want done are adopted by May 1st. They try to make the community more desirable within that time. And then the plans, their last plan that they mentioned was in 2010, but these plans take time and energy and money. And these plans are implemented like over 2 to 20 years. And they mentioned a lot about their like roadmap, which is just like they're thinking far into the future about what the community needs, like Rick said, for public transportation and future communities and stuff. So
Yeah, so definitely not, like, although it may sound simple, it's definitely not a simple process to do what they do and get done the things that they get done, and implementing all these different things into the community.
It was good too. I mean, we live in a very established community in Wheaton where we might already have sidewalks and bike paths and things like that, whereas I think it was good to go to a bicycle and pedestrian commission in Warrenville because they're still growing and developing.
Right.
So to see like almost a new town being built was like kind of remarkable.
Certainly.
You know how it, like that process is done.
One guy I saw, I didn't know his name because he never spoke, but he was just taking notes the entire time, and he voted. He voted in the first guy, Dan.
Damon.
He voted.
Oh yeah.
He voted
Yeah.
in the initial like.
It almost seemed like it was in a like it seemed like they rotated. Are you talking about the guy? on the
Yeah,
left?
he kept the minutes.
So
Oh,
I
that
think
guy.
I think they might have
Damon.
rotate who does it each
And
time.
it wasn't a desirable
Because they said his
position.
name and they're like, are you like taking notes and keeping time today? So he had his laptop out, and they were organized about that too.
I would also like to add that sitting in on the meeting, I noticed that Bill, who was sitting in the government official, seemed like he really didn't want to be there.
Yeah, I would agree.
And
with that.
I mean, honestly, if I was in Bill's position too, I wanted to be there because those people were so like dedicated to getting these crosswalks in place and bike safety and all that stuff that they wouldn't take no. I could see that they wouldn't take no for an answer.
In addition, like, I keep going back to how difficult it was for them to get what they had to get done, like, accomplished. They said that they had to cooperate. He used a specific example, like, if they wanted a bike path and it, like, runs through somebody's front yard, like, some people would have a problem with that. And there are, like, so many other obstacles, like building on land that's not necessarily in their zone. He mentioned, like, the border between Warrenville and Naperville a lot.
Jeannie Ives, I'm the state rep for the 42nd District.
Okay. And do you want to like briefly explain some of your like main duties as a state rep?
So the biggest thing that we do as a state rep is we vote. We decide if the legislation's good or bad, if it advances our agenda or if it doesn't. And certainly we all go down there with, I guess, an idea of things we want to get accomplished. And so you do that via legislation for the most part. And then I also feel that legislators have an oversight role. So whether it's taking on public corruption, exposing it, putting attention on it, asking for reports so that you can highlight areas of problems. Some of that can be done that's not legislatively enacted, but just done because you expose a problem and then it can get solved. So you've got bills, you've got oversight, and then you've got constituent services. So that means taking care of people and being their interface between a big bureaucracy and trying to get the services that they need and deserve. What I really enjoy doing is taking somebody's problem and then actually enacting legislation to help them solve that problem. So I was able to do that twice this year, working with Democrats across the aisle on two really major pieces of legislation. One dealt with health care, and the other one dealt with property rights.
Kind of going off that, actually, like, do you ever find it difficult to kind of get your like thoughts heard, or like your ideas heard, being a Republican in such a Democratic state?
Oh, they listen to me. So it's not a matter of them not hearing me. It's a matter of whether or not they want to advance the same policy agenda that I want.
Okay.
And that's where we actually have our differences. So, you know, look, I think that there's some things, though, to me, good policy is good politics, and good policy is not Democrat, Republican, Independent. It's not. It's just good policy because it moves people forward in their life or protects them in other ways. So when we talk about jobs, you should listen to the business community when you don't have the jobs that you should have in this state, right? And yet, every single Democrat representative in Springfield, every single one of them has a failing grade when their votes are rated by business organizations. Well, that doesn't advance business in the state of Illinois. So, you know, and truth is that we've got 2.5 times the size of the economy of Indiana, and they are beating us in job growth day after day, and that's got to stop. We can't have this out migration and still expect to be able to stay here and afford to live here.
So this is a little different, but what would you consider like your favorite part, or what would be the favorite part of your job?
I like, well, I'm pretty much a policy person, so I like getting into the weeds on policy and then translating that to individuals so that they can hear the right arguments, and so we can really change how we do business in the state of Illinois. I like the policy formation. I like making the arguments in committee and on the House floor about policy, and I like actually taking other people's suggestion about policy and turning it into legislation that actually makes a difference in people's lives.
And would some of these suggestions, like we've been learning a little bit about interest groups, have you like?
Oh, sure. There's
a lot of contact with.
Yeah, there's
interest
a ton of them.
groups?
So yeah, there's like 1,000 registered lobbyists down in
Right.
Springfield,
Yeah,
and you know, on top of just the registered lobbyists, then you have all your separate special interest groups. So you have. You know, actually Wednesday is T-shirt day down in Springfield. It's like, what color of T-shirt is going to show up, and you know, scream on in the rotunda for what they want, and it's usually, you know, it's usually public sector unions, quite frankly. So you've got a ton of those folks arguing for their position. Then you've got people that are everything from conservative groups like Illinois Family Action and the pro-life groups to you'll have the homeless coalition and the disability groups and people that need and want government services, or people that want government to stay out of their lives. You'll have a coalition of them, and a lot of them have their own lobbyists as well.
Right.
And so the special interest groups are there. They're part of the landscape, and you need to sometimes they bring you valuable information about topics that you don't know. Look, we have laws on everything from, you know, energy to labor to consumer protection. I mean, you've got to listen to people that actually work in that field to get the right result, and so they do have a role. It's just that, unfortunately, if you don't go down to Springfield with a set of principles that can help guide you in nearly every decision that you make, then you're going to get rolled by the last lobbyist who whispered in your ear, or the leadership who told you how to vote a certain way.
So what would you say first motivated you to get into politics?
I started out in Wheaton City Council,
Okay.
and it was a tax issue, and I just felt like they were raising taxes, and I didn't understand exactly why they were. And the reason I didn't understand is because when you attended the meetings there, it's like nobody was saying anything, and the questions that I wanted answered weren't even being asked amongst the council members, and so I felt like there was a whole host of decisions made behind closed doors with, and I wanted input. I wanted input into the process, and sorry, man.
So, would you say that being an incoming candidate has like helped you get elected, or
Being a what?
being an incumbent?
Oh, an
candidate?
incumbent? Yeah, sure. Incumbency has definitely its privileges, and it's just easier, because a lot of running for any office is name ID. That's the biggest thing.
Yeah.
So people need to know your name. That's
right.
huge.
Yeah. I've definitely seen those campaign ads of your site.
Oh yeah, my
Definitely.
signs are pretty visible.
Yes.
Yeah, thanks.
And going off of that, like, what would you say is like the most challenging or the biggest challenge you face in the election process?
In the election process, for me, it's tightening up my message so that it's understandable to folks, because I can tend to go too deep into the analysis, and people just want to hear the top line 8-second bullet comment about something. And so I actually think that folks can understand the details, and that I should respect them enough to give them details on stuff, but I'm constantly told that I'm long-winded on my answers. So I think that's the case. I think it's hard to really get people to understand the ramifications of certain policy if it's put in place, and so many people are swayed by just somebody else's, cliched response to stuff, and they don't really know the candidate themselves and what they stand for, and so it's hard to get past that.
So also it's kind of been in the news recently. You plan on like running in the Republican primaries?
Yeah, my team and we're running for governor. We'll file on Monday to run for governor, so we're very excited about that. And I'm running against an incumbent, so.
Yeah.
But we're I got essentially drafted by my colleagues and others around the state to run against a governor who has failed to do what he said he was going to do and be who he said he was going to be. So in my opinion, that you get your 4 years, and if you have nothing to show for it, you don't deserve another 4 years. And in this case, he actually lied about who he was and what he was going to do, and that's hurt families and taxpayers statewide. So time for a change.
Yeah, all right.
Yeah.
And then also, what would you say are like some of the best and worst parts about your current job?
The best part is that there's nothing more important than having a voice in democracy, and understanding that if you I hear a lot of people, I don't like to get involved in politics. Well, politics doesn't care. It's going to involve you. And so if you fail to actually get involved and pay attention, you don't know where this is going to lead. That's how economies die. That's how spending gets out of control, is when people aren't paying attention and they're not watching. And in the state of Illinois, we have $250 billion in debt, $16 billion in unpaid bills. We've piled debt upon your generation if you choose to stay here in the state of Illinois. We have, obviously, you guys know, when you go to search for colleges, many folks are going out of state for better deals because they can't afford even in-state tuition here. So that all came about because of policy choices politicians made in the past that has indebted our future. And the only way to change that is to actually have honest conversations with people and move forward. So I guess that's a long way of saying that it is really important that people understand that who you elect as a politician translates into policy. There's no other reason to have a politician other than to enact policy.
You mentioned the debt too. Just what would you say is like the first step you think in kind of solving the debt, I guess you could say, or fixing Illinois' debt?
Fixing Illinois' economics.
Yeah.
So there's it's really a few things. First of all, we need to grow our economy, so we need people working and off of welfare. We can't have 1 million families getting food stamps. We just can't have it. People need to be put to work. We need to align jobs with people with credit with certificates that allow them to work in their fields. We need to move them off welfare and move them into work. It's the right thing to do for them. Besides, it just makes them more responsible. So we can't afford our welfare state that we have in the state of Illinois, quite frankly, and we need more jobs for everybody, good paying jobs, which means we have to change a lot of policy on that area. Number 2 is we have to cut spending. You know, we haven't had a balanced budget since 2001. We're mired in debt. A lot of that's pension debt. So we have to reform our pension system immediately. Should have been done years ago, never was. So we have to reform pensions, period. Because it's not allowing us to do all the other investments that we need to do. So that's another thing we have to, and then, you know, overarching all of that, and the reason that we got here is public corruption. So public corruption is an everyday event in the state of Illinois, and the executive should take that head on and highlight it and expose it and stamp it out.
Mm-hmm.
So.
One more, I think, question.
Oh yeah. So would you say that being a state rep still allows you like ample time to dedicate to your personal life and your family?
Well, you know, yes, I do. I coached the St. Michael's cross country team for 12 years, even while I was a state rep. I've now given that up because my daughter's an 8th grader, so I'm moving on from that commitment. But no, I mean, I'm able to have some flexibility with also taking care of my family. So state rep's a really nice job for that. Governor, of course, is an all-in prospect, and it's going to take every ounce of my time to, 1, win this race, and then number 2, change Illinois and its policies. So that'll be an all-out effort.
All right, and I think that was the last question.
Oh,
Actually.
wow.
Okay.
That was pretty easy. Okay,
Yeah.
good. That's all?
Yeah.
Oh, you guys
That's
are
all we got.
easy.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very
Thanks a
much.
lot.
Thank you.
Good
Nice
luck
meeting
on
you.
Friday.
Thank you.
Yeah.
You too.
Nice
Bye,
to meet
guys.
you.
Yeah, good luck
Thanks a
running for
lot.
governor.